In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times and in various ways, but in these last days, He has spoken to us by His Son. These words were said, however, 600 years later, another man rose to power, whom 1.6 billion Muslims follow. They say, oh no, in these last days, God has spoken to us through Muhammad. It is not only outside America, but here in the United States, there are between 9 to 12 million Muslims living, and they believe the same, that it is not through Jesus, but through Muhammad, as he is the final prophet God has spoken to us. There is another problem which we see in the world when we look at Islam through our media and through the system, through all the news. On the right, you see the outside world, that's outside America. A lot of things are going on. There is not only all the disasters are taking place, but also you find that wherever there is a terrorism act place, yes, there are non-Muslims who are involved in terrorism, but many of the terrorism atrocities you find the majority, 99.9%, are committed by Muslims. So why is this happening? And why does Islam say that Islam will dominate the world? The Muslims are thinking, and even if you say a little bit thing like this day, I am saying these things, if I was in Pakistan, in Saudi Arabia, or in a Muslim country, by this time I would have been facing prosecution under the blasphemy law, code of law, or should have been killed. So that is the situation. On one hand, Islam says, like Rahafuddin, there is no compulsion in religion. Then on the other hand, if you say something against Muhammad, there is a problem. Now, on the left side, you see that this is the situation in America. Of course, we are told that, oh, we are all one. We may have different paths, but we are reaching to the path of God. That destination is God Himself, and we all are children of Abraham. And they will say that not anymore. Please do not use anymore Judeo-Christian heritage. You should use Abrahamic heritage. That is the movement going on in this country. And of course, so this is what is happening. We are facing the two faces of Islam. There is the worldwide interpretation that in one hand there is a sword and in another hand the Bible. You remember when Ezra and his colleagues, and of course Nehemiah and others were building the wall of Jerusalem, they had a sword in one hand and to lay the bricks or the stones in the other. They were doing this. But here they have in one hand the Quran and in the other hand the sword or the weapons of today. And they would say Islam, the word Islam actually means submission. See, Islam is a religion and Muslim is the person who follows it. So don't use this word Islamic people. It's the Muslim people, the Muslim who. So anyway, Islam means submission, surrender. Islam is both religious and political ideology. I wish and I desire that your government in this country, your people who are in politics will realize that Islam is not just religion, it is a political entity. Yes, in this country you are allowed to have religious freedom, but what about that religion which says no other law but the law of Islam should be followed, and if you don't, you are in big trouble. That's politics as well. And so when you do that, now you have your own constitution, your local government laws, and then there are these Islamic laws. So what do? You allow them to have parallel laws going by side. Are you going to then let them have a lot of other things like punishments, like the justice courts would do? Anyhow, we'll talk about that some other time if you invite me. All people have to surrender, become Muslims, or accept to be second-class citizen. You have heard the word dhimitude? Nowadays, in very much emails and other things. Dhimmi means protected. In other words, this word was introduced in the Quran, and non-Muslims who are Christians or Jews, they be under the protection of the government of Islam. They have to pay a special tax, and they will become dhimmi, second-class citizen, and they will be protected. So yes, Muslims pay tax, but Jews and Christians will be not only paying the tax which Muslims do, but also paying their own tax, because the Muslim empire or the Muslim government is taking care of you. So you pay a separate tax as well. And there are certain other attitudes you have to follow. Even if you build a church, it should not be in the opposite of the mosque, and it should not be higher than the mosque. The mosque minaret will always be higher. So they believe Islam means total submission and world domination at any cost. That is the interpretation. And I believe that interpretation comes from the Quran, and it is the real interpretation of what Islam is all about. Now we come to the American version, or in some cases the European version as well. Islam is a worldview and also is a religion, but not a political entity. This is what they tell us in this country. Islam means peace. And of course, again, one God, many paths, and there are other advertisements as well. This is a picture from South Florida on the buses. Islam, the message of Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, all together. And so if you need more information, they will provide. Then you see something like this. Oh, we only do military struggle only in defense. But since in this country Muslims are in peace, we do not do that. And of course they will put these, this is by United Muslims of America. They have put this billboard together, multi-million-dollar campaign. Islam condemns terrorism and terrorists, period. Oh, very good. But when you go into the detail of it, then they will tell you, when you refer to what's happening in Israel, what's happening in some of the Muslim countries, and what's happening in Kashmir, what's happening in Cyprus, what's happening in Philippines, and you mention all these things, they will say, oh, we do these things, only what you call terrorism, we call it freedom fight. And they quickly will change the conversation. Oh, you know, those terrorists, Irish terrorists who are found in Britain, and the Britain call them, they are terrorists, but you go to Northern Ireland, they call them freedom fighters. And that is the way. If the America or West will leave us alone, we will be better off with it, and we will have no military struggle. But that's not really true. Anyhow, we'll leave it there, but that's what they interpret for you as well. One of the sad things which I see is that all these presidents in the modern age, I would say the postmodern age which we have, they say, well, they constantly tell us that Islam is the religion of peace. And politically, I know why they say this, because they do know that there are Muslims living in this country. They do not want to have a backlash on the streets of America, because those other Americans who are non-Muslim, they will become upset and go and fire things up, and it could be a problem. So they stick to this idea that Islam has been hijacked by just a few terrorist groups or terrorist people, and Islam is the religion of peace. Yet, for the sake of truth, I want to share this with you, that Islamic teaching and history show that this is not true. And let me share this with you. The historical truth is that, inspired by the verses or the passages of the Quran and the traditions of Islam, Muslims through military struggle took control of Arabia first, and then after Muhammad's death, they exploded out, they came out of Arabia, and through conquest established an empire from Atlantic to the Pacific. Why? How? That was again, the majority was through conquest. Only in the Far East, some places like Malaysia and Indonesia, there was a different story. It was more a business type of trips and things happened. By population explosion, they will call it. And I will come back to that. But mostly there was a vacuum in the Middle East. The Roman Empire had already gone. Even the Persian Empire was in big trouble. And of course, they took advantage of it. And the next thing was that first the Christians were persecuting Jews. Now the Muslims come, they were not only persecuting now the Jews, but also the Christians too. So, yet some today in the USA hide such facts, as they are trying to rewrite your American history, and the same way they are rewriting how good Islam is all about. So what's behind such trends? Well, let's unmask the face of Islam. Let's check it out. Well, spiritually, when we see it's all about Muhammad and his Islamic religious texts, he says, according to Islam, this Quran is not the words of Muhammad, it is the word of God revealed to him through angel Gabriel piecemeal during the 23 years of his Islamic ministry. And so, this man who was born in 570, some will say 571 AD, died in 632, he started preaching and teaching at age 40. This man was born in Mecca, today that is Saudi Arabia. And Mecca, as we earlier talked, was a kind of central place, according to Islamic historians to us, that people used to come for pilgrimages and all the worshipping idols. So he was born there, he was brought up, but he was a member of a society called the Hanifs. This would be like an interfaith group which had become so upset with Jews and Christian people, and of course all these Ebionites Christians and this Christian and that Christian, that they had established that they would only believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Ishmael, and all these other things. And there was a man which the Islamic historian tells us, Warqa bin Nawfal. And Warqa bin Nawfal was the one who made a lot of impression on Muhammad. And Muhammad had this experience, it is told to us, that chapter 96 of the Quran is actually the first revelation which given to Muhammad by angel Gabriel from God. Iqra bi ismi rabbika allazi khalaq. Recite in the name of God who has created you, and of course created you from a clot of blood and all that. And then it goes and he comes home and he tells his wife that he saw this, he met this experience. And his wife, by the name Khadija, that was the widow of a rich person and now married. She was 40 years old, he was 25, but at the age when 40, he when told her this thing, she took him to Warqa bin Nawfal, because Warqa bin Nawfal, who was this member of the Hanif groups, he was also a leader, or let's say a deacon, and he told him that it seems like God has chosen you as God chose for the Israelite Moses. God has chosen you as a prophet to your people, to the Arabs. So to believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it was that experience, he was kind of convinced that for the next few years, he was kind of like a secret worker for that. Well, it was during those 13 years, after 5 years, he became open and invited all people. So, all the Meccans, when they saw that he is talking about gods and goddesses, that they are not, we have to believe in Allah, which we already believe, but he says this Allah has no daughters, Allah has no other, these gods and goddesses. Now imagine this, as Christians, you have read your scripture, you are still reading as I do, and we should be doing that, understanding it. Remember when in Ephesus, Paul had a big problem with idol makers. They got against him. Why? Because it was not very much what Paul was preaching. It was very much that, oh, this person is talking about this other God, and people will leave these idols which we are making, our business will go down. And so that's what some of the hierarchy in Meccan city, they had this, you know, the pilgrimage people will come, and of course there will be business and a lot of things will happen. So this city, these people thought, if he is doing this thing to us, this place will be empty. He quickly said, well, this place is also built by Abraham. And this temple, but you put these 360 idols in it, I don't want that, that should be discarded. They didn't agree with him, but at this time he was preaching, well, if you don't want to accept it, that's up to you. I'm a mere warner and a prophet sent to you, to those people to whom no prophet has been sent before. In other words, the Arabs never received a prophet like the Israelites received, and now Muhammad was telling them that I have come to you. You have been always saying that God has given books and prophets to all these other nations, including the Israelites, and we have nothing. But now an Arab prophet has come to you as well. God has heard you. I am here, and you do not believe in me. But anyway, what I would say to you is, any, whether a Jew, Christian, or Sabian, whoever believes in God and on the last day, no fear shall they face. So yes, on the day of judgment, there will be a day of judgment coming, and even in your daily life, you don't have to fear for your life, because these people were afraid of anything. A storm will come. They knew that we could be under the sand dune if we are left in the dust out there. We could be in big trouble. So there was all type of fears of being attacked and all these other things. So they said, if you believe in God and on the day of judgment, and of course in me as a prophet of God sent to you, then that's all. So whether you are a Jew, Christian, you don't have to be even a Muslim. In fact, when people would disagree with him, after the conversation, he will say, okay, lakum dinakum waliya din. For you is your faith, and for me is my faith. And shake hand. Okay, you do not want to accept, that's okay. So as the time passed, he would even say those who had followed him, he would tell them that go and tell other people to become believer in the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, whom we know as Allah. But don't pressurize them. Even if they tell you, don't talk to me anymore, stop. Don't say anything to them anymore. Some non-Muslims in those days will be very much upset when they will see a Muslim performing his prayer. So Muhammad told his followers at that time, La tajhar bisalatika, which means don't raise your voice too much so that other people may hear you. Remember that now, and I will tell you more. And then he will say, let there be no compulsion in the religion, la ikraha fi din. However, these 13 years in Mecca, he preached with his message also peacefulness, and of course converted about 150 people to Islam through friendship. These people were persecuted by the Meccans, so he told them, well, the best way is to go to Ethiopia. And there are some Christians living there, and perhaps they will hide you. Well, some of them went, and he himself, because he was afraid of to be killed, he left Mecca, actually ran out of Mecca and went to another city where his mother's tribe lived. The place was called Medina, and those days it was called Yathrib. And of course he changed the name to Medina, which means city. So in 622 he escaped assassination and migrated to Medina, and it was here that he established his community of followers to be called Muslims. And from there on he took power. He started with a kind of diplomacy, and this diplomacy will be, you may think it's a British slogan, but it's not. It comes from the desert of Arabia. Divide and rule. And that's what he did. There were some Jewish tribes living in Medina as well. And these Jewish tribes is known to have fled in 70 AD. And some of them were actually living before that. Because, you know, from time to time, Israel was always ransacked and a lot of things would happen. You may remember that about Paul, it is mentioned that he lived in Arabia as well for 2 years. There are times when I want to know what happened, but I go nowhere. Anyway, that's perhaps not very much important. But here this man also became kind of concerned about the Jews around him. And he established a pact with them that if other people would attack them, or even his own people or their own people will attack each other, his responsibility will be that he and his community will help these Jews against the other Jews or against the other non-Jews people to protect them. However, they did not very much realize in the beginning that this man was doing something, conspiring something totally different. So here is Stephen and there is Peter. And Stephen and Peter are the elders of the two tribes. And he comes to Stephen and say, you know that Peter, your brother in Judaism, he is really against you and all these other things because you are a small group. You have just a few families of tribe. But you know, I'm on your side. If he does something, I will be on your side. And then as this thing go along, I become upset against Peter, and he joins me, Muhammad joins me to get rid of Peter. And so, Peter is got rid of, but I am now on my own. Now, Muhammad gets rid of me. It's a very simple way of mentioning this. This is just a parabolic way to explain to you, but that's the way things happen. And I can prove it to you. We can go more in that information if we study the life of Muhammad by Muhammad ibn Ishaq and also by Ibn Hisham. There is a translation of it available, Life of Muhammad by Hume, Alfred Hume, and you can find that. Anyway, it was here in Medina that he started for the rest of the year a campaign. He began using violence to promote his new religion. And what did he do? He started ambush tactics against his opposition, which is called terrorism. Today you call it terrorism. In those days, what he did was, he asked his people, well, remember that those earlier revelation of peacefulness and all those, for you is your faith and for me is my faith, that's all gone. What God has now said is, lay and wait in the path of these Meccan people who kicked us out, and when those caravans and these people go back to their city, you know, it's like in the old days, those robbers and thieves will stand in the path, and when a wagon is coming, they will attack it. That's what he started. Well, his followers in the beginning did not like it. He said, but those are our brothers and sisters whom we left. So he said, only in Islam you are brothers and sisters. But then they said, but that is not a good idea. Because these people, these Arabs, although they were pagan worshippers, they had some moral standards. And they said, we cannot do that. That would be like killing innocent people and taking all their stuff away from them. And you are saying that God had made this halal for us? This is kosher for us? And he said, well, I cannot do anything about it. It is God. He was pinning on Allah all these things. And they said, okay. And so what happens, just take an example like this. There is a young man who is a working hard person, but he can only earn $10, $15 a day. And then there is a corrupt person comes along and says, man, if we do this, we will be millionaire in a night. And then they rob and thief. Now, the tiger has tasted a human's blood. And that's what happened. They started, oh, this was easy and cheap. And it is God who is saying that I win both ways. If I'm killed in that type of raid, I go straight into the paradise of God. If I win, I get all the booty and everything that is mine. So that was the situation. And I'm not kidding you. This word I learned here in America, the word kidding. So I'm not lying to you. What am I saying today, I can prove to you, I can bring more and more information if I'm still living on this earth. I can show that to you. So Muhammad claimed that his earlier revelation exalting peace in the Quran was superseded by the later passages commanding war. So what did he do? This is what it was a personal vendetta. He wanted to get rid of those Meccan leaders who had kicked him out. So now personal vendetta, he is bringing other people. Kill them wherever you find them and drive them out from whence they drove you out. Remember, he had sent some of his followers to Ethiopia. Now they have come back and joined him as well. And he now told them, remember, you left your house there, you left your people there, you left all your business there, you came out. That was their fault, not your fault. And now God had given you permission to turn the table against them and get them. So Muhammad invited infidels and apostates to accept Islam. Remember that when some people who had become Muslim, they heard this, no. We don't want to do that. So they become apostate in the eyes of Muhammad. Now he said, okay, those even who have gone out of us again, they should be killed too. And so a system started, and that was slay the unbelievers where you find them and seize them, besiege them, and lie in wait for them. That's the way he started. And you know how many people were who orchestrated that big terrorism and killing more than 3,000 people just in one go? There were 19 of them. There were only 2 of them who ran into, and another 2 into the tower. It takes just a few people to orchestrate such havoc. And that's what happened. How many thousand people who orchestrated communism? How many people were there who orchestrated the slaughter and the chamber thing for killing all these many Jews? So you see, this is what happened. As the time went on, they realized that when might is right, because when we take our sword in our hands and all these other things, it's much easier for us, especially in our land. So, and here is even God wills it. So if God wills it, why can't we do it? And so Muhammad, always presenting him as a third person, he said, kill those who believe not in Allah, nor the last day. In other words, the message I'm presenting. So even if they are the people of the book now, the Jews and the Christians, even they have to be killed unless they pay jizya, that okay, we will become second-class citizen and we will pay taxes to you and we are willing to submit ourselves and to be subdued. We will be, now the caste system will start. We will be second-class citizen under your empire. So today the question then comes, what feeds what is going on in the world? Why Muslims want to take over? Well, Muhammad said something interesting in the Quran as well. First of all, if you love God, you should remember, Allah loves those who kill in His cause. I wish that in this country, people will see these words. Which side of the word kill you do not understand. I can read to you, Inna Allah yuhibbul lazina yuqatiluna fi sabilihi. Indeed, Allah loves those people who kill in His path, in His way. There it is. And so, and there are other places. In fact, you will find there are 350 verses compelling and exhorting Muslims to hate and fight non-Muslims. And here in this country, we're told, oh no, Islam is a very peaceful faith. It does not. It was in the past, not now. Well, the Quran is treated as the perfect book for every day of life. And so, when you go to the interpretation of these verses, the books of tradition, what Muhammad said and what Muhammad did, it's also full of how to engage with non-Muslims and establish Islam. Again, what feeds the jihad? We will not touch very much on the traditions of Islam. They are full of all those waging war against non-Muslims. Look at the first-hand authority. In 3 places in the Quran, it appears that God has sent His apostle, in other words, Muhammad, with guidance and true religion, which is Islam, so to make it prevail over all. 3 places. And what does it mean? Whether by hook, whether by crook, whether by friendship, whether by deceit, or whatever, if your general purpose, if the goal is to establish Islam, you can cheat, you can, whatever you can do, you can just go ahead and do it. And that's the way it is. I'm not lying to you, it's there. وَالَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ يُظْهِرُهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ. Kullihi means to take over all. You talk about interfaith, it's okay, let's live side by side. And we will come to that too. So, from the history, as a student of the history of Islam, and of course other religions and everything I see, when I look at Islam, let's learn from history. This is my observation, and I can prove to you from the history of Islam this way. The first one is the weakened stage. When you are weak. See, Muhammad was when weak, what he did? The same. Cooperate with your enemy, befriend your neighbor, gain sympathy, impress ideas. And if they don't want to accept, it's up to them. That is stage one. But stage two, the preparation stage. Recruit outside help, build your arsenal, prepare for war. Use both stage 1 and 2 together now. And so you enter into third. And thank God that that has not yet arrived on your land. It's only from the outside you have enemies trying to attack your borders. And when I think about your borders, oh my, I really feel about the situation of Nineveh. That had it not been, there are godly people in this country praying and praising God to protect this country. God would have said, okay, bye-bye. But as Jonah was sent to Nineveh and Jonah wanted to see the firework, but God in his mercifulness was still holding his hand, but there was a time when Nineveh was gone. So America, please watch it. Still, you have loads of time available to you. So here it is. They may not be successful, but they have a dream. What about your dream? What about the dream of your forefathers as believers in Christ? What about your dream as believer in Christ? At the end of the day, it is not about America. It is about life in Christ and having that full freedom which has been granted to you in Him. That's why. You have a fight. This is not fight with Muslims. This is a fight against the devil. This is a fight in the heavenlies. Amen. And that's what we have to be involved in. So this is my observation that in the United States of America, stage 1 and 2 are in use so far. You as the United States Muslims, those Muslims who are hearing, they have this strategy. And again, we can talk about it, I can prove, but this is what I have found. They use multi-million-dollar campaign to show how good Islam is. They target schools, colleges, and universities where you already have been pushed out. So they saw this vacuum, like Muhammad saw the vacuum military-wise in the Middle East. They see this vacuum, not only that Christianity has been taken out, but there is a vacuum because they know communism, socialism cannot work in this country. People still have a desire to worship someone, worship money, worship something, but those are all. So let them have this Allah of Islam in their minds and in their hearts by coming through the back door. And this is what is happening. So today, a lobby, as soon as you talk about Christian prayer, will take you to court. But if they see Muslims, they will keep quiet about it. The American Law Association, whatever that is in Washington, those atheist friends, they have this type of attitude. So it's a program against Jesus has been mentioned again and again, which kind of condemns. Nobody is bothering. But if you present something about Muhammad, oh, they're scared. Why BBC does not issue something about Muhammad? Oh, that's a different matter. And a lot of things against Jesus on our channels here. So, advice, show outward cooperation with your enemy, befriend your neighbors and politicians, get media and politicians on your side, take heavy part in politics. You know that there is a group called Muslim Parliament, something like that, and they send their interns, young men, this is Muslim organization. They recruit interns, Muslim interns, mostly young men, to go and work in Washington, D.C. with your congressman and representative. So to know how these things work. When was the last time you sent your interns there to study? They send their representative to speak to the Marion County representative, to the other representative in Tallahassee. They will celebrate a capital Muslim day. When was the last time you as Christian visited Tallahassee or other states? So convince them that the enemy is the other, not us. And so, in the name of coexist all this, recruit help, spread Islam in the United States of America through using US laws and freedom. So there will be Muslim hierarchy, and there are these girls and boys in the university campuses. Oh, there should be peace and all this thing, let's coexist. Look at that. Christian, there is Jews and Muslim, oh, we can coexist. Why can't they coexist in Israel? Why can't they coexist in Muslim lands? Only America is left to be coexist. Yes, we like to coexist. We like to be peaceful. But what's behind it, we should know. Always display that a Muslim is the victim of American Islamophobia. Oh, anything you say, like I'm saying this thing, I would be blamed in the Daily Sun if there was a Muslim fellow and he made a big thing, and then the next thing, all these recordings could be used to say, oh, see, Islamophobic. And that's what be. I will be labeled for that, and I have been. So, coexistence. Look at this. Common word between Muslims and Christians and interfaith alliances, and these Muslims are very much part of it. Here is Chrislam. This is another, started in Nigeria. But nowadays there is a church here nearby you, and they say, okay, you can quote from the Quran in your sermon and also from the Bible, because both are teaching good things, and let's live together. So there is a peaceful PR about Muhammad. Look at this billboard. Muhammad, a mercy to mankind. Very good. But what about this? This is what Muhammad said. The gates of paradise are under the shadows of the swords. I have been made victorious with terror. Oh, terrorism is not found in the Quran. It's not found in the traditions of Islam. We don't preach terrorism. That's just Osama bin Laden doing it. Where did Osama bin Laden get the idea? From Muhammad. That is there. I have been ordered, this is Muhammad saying, I have been ordered by Allah to fight against the people till they say, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. And whoever said, La ilaha illallah, yes, I accept there is no God but Allah, he saved his life and property from me. Do you understand these words? There it is for you. And so when I look, as a researcher, as a student, looking at the face of this whole building of the United States of America, I see how Muslims are doing. Yes, one thing, evangelism. Islam also has a word for it, dawah. And of course, marriages. Muhammad said, explode the world through marriages and have more children. Look at the state of abortion in this country. It really rends my heart and a lot of other people. You are killing children, critical influence. Why would this country even be so helping the Muslim Brotherhood? And yet that's what we did. And then Saudi Arabia, just one thing they realized, that Muslim Brotherhood was against the royalty. They said, okay, we will get rid of this Muslim Brotherhood even if America does not want it. And so they brought the military in power. The UAE and the Saudi Arabia got together, gave those billions of dollars to the military of Egypt, and they brought back the military again. And now we are encouraging in Turkey and Syria and all those things. Anyway, that's their area. Educational institution. Christians are barred, but Muslims can have Christian and Muslim relation, big offices there. The media is in their hand now. Financial institution. Do you know that on Wall Street, you have a system called Iman X. Iman means faith. Iman X. And under the Islamic Sharia system, you can invest money and you can do a lot of things and businesses on Wall Street. There it is. Our banks. You go to a bank and say, I would like to have a financial kind of file under the Islamic Sharia financial system. Oh, yes. Why? Because there are trillions of dollars available under the Islamic Sharia system by Saudi Arabia and other countries to you. And so these banks, they don't care what will happen in 10 years. We want to have it now or never. And because of that, it's my money and I want to have it now. Nobody cares what will happen tomorrow. Even if it's not ours, we want to have it. And the other person says, okay, it's like the shark people, they gave you this loan on 32% or 50%, and then you are paying for the rest of your life. So, of course, they are supporting the Mujahideen. And then this is very interesting for you, the doctrine of taqiyya and kitman, deception and concealment of intentions for a greater purpose. So, Muslims are allowed to use this doctrine not only to keep their family and community intact, but also to use it to deceive non-Muslims for a greater purpose, to establish Islamization. So, coexist. Now see how they do this lying business. Here is something for you. Muhammad, like Christians, Muslims should do too. This is some Muslim groups talking. And so, what happens is that Muslims and Christians get together. This is one example in Texas. It's a mega church which puts together the whole thing to create friendship between Muslims and Christians. And so leaflets and booklets on Islam is given how good Islam is. But let's go to the full source. Look at this. Here in the Quran it says, take not the Jews and Christians for friends. They are friends one to another. He among you who take them for friends is one of them. And yet on the other hand, you just saw Muslims like Muhammad like Christians and Muslims should too. But what about this? Why? To hide the intentions. See, this is the way they do it. And so here, why such a handshake should be done? Well, handshake for peace is only allowed when Muslims are in one minority or weak in a country. And so, there it is. Again, in the Quran it says, be not weak and ask not for peace while you are having the upper hand. So, the time when you have the upper hand, you cannot have peace. You should attack them, you should ask them. It is ruled, democracy now rules this in our hand. And so that's why they will do these things, because they know. So there you have it, the two faces of Islam. So what should be our biblical response now? The problem is not the Muslim, it is the ideology behind him. And of course, follow the greatest command if you want to solve it. But with that, then the greatest commission. Our problem in this country is we don't want to love our neighbors. How can we love a Muslim neighbor? Here in this country, I have seen this again and again. When was the last time we talked to our neighbor? And so this is the situation. Unless we bring the both commandments together, the great command, there it is. Here. Not only with our mind, with our heart, but also loving our neighbor, and then following the Great Commission. So how can we do? Live Jesus and share Jesus with others, Muslims included. A Muslim wants to live forever, and we have to share only Jesus promised that eternity. Thank you so much. Forgive me for being so emotional and running, but it comes from the heart. Please hear me.